So appreciate everyone's patience as I read the lovely play sheet that Jessica helps us with. So I will now call to order the THPRD mid-year budget committee meeting for February 22nd, 2023. Jessica, will you please take roll?
John Casino. John, are you here? I saw you check in.
I wonder if he's muted.
Yeah.
Elizabeth Edwards. She is running a little bit late tonight. Heidi Edwards.
Here.
Chris Howard.
Here.
Barbie Miner.
Here.
Felisa de Monteblanco.
Here.
Alfredo Moreno.
I'm here.
Tia Ping.
Here.
Carolyn Wee.
Here.
Natalie Zenner.
Here.
Is that everyone? Sorry.
That is everyone.
Thank you, Jessica. So agenda item 2, I will now open the floor for nominations for budget committee chair. Am I allowed to make a nomination? I don't see anyone raising their hands.
More than welcome.
Thank you.
You are allowed.
Well, Elizabeth's awesome, and it's my understanding that she's enthusiastic to do it again. So I would love to nominate Elizabeth. It feels evil that she's not here and I'm nominating her, but it sounds like she's open to it.
Did you verify that, or are you just wishing?
You see, Doug is
I
nodding.
can verify it.
Okay.
Do I have a second? I'm making a motion. Do I have a
I
second?
will second that.
Thank you, Tia.
You're welcome.
Jessica, do you now take roll? Or do we have to get other
no,
nominations?
we can do if everyone's in favor, aye, and all opposed, no.
I apologize. The lovely play sheet you gave me, I can't, it's not scrolling. So I'm already done with what I can contribute. So if everyone's in favor, please vote aye.
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 I can't
Aye.
see everyone. Is
Aye.
anyone opposed? Natalie, I'm assuming.
I said aye, and I gave a thumbs up.
Wow, Natalie, extra points for that. Thank you.
Thanks.
John Casino's here and raises his hand.
Thank you,
yes,
John.
also.
So we have a budget chair. Thank you so much. And I think we're moving to general manager's comments.
Do we not do budget sketch secretary?
Yeah, we do need to do the secretary position.
I literally cannot read any
Yeah.
more of the page. I'm so sorry. I have failed beyond measure.
No problem. So we're simply opening up for the
It's
budget.
really nice. It's right here on the PowerPoint. Do we have a nomination for budget committee secretary? Would someone like to self-nominate?
Who's
I
our
do believe
current
Lee-
secretary?
Heidi Edwards is our current
Oh.
secretary.
I am happy to serve again as secretary. I will self-nominate myself, Heidi Edwards.
Thank you, Heidi. I will second that motion. Jessica, no. If people agree, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
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 Does anyone
Aye.
oppose? Thank you to our wonderful leaders for stepping up. It's very much appreciated. We will now move from this awkward interaction to our general manager's comments. Take it away, Doug.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, good evening, everyone. It's an honor to be with you this evening as we take a look at the district's finances for the mid-year and a peek ahead in terms of planning efforts for the upcoming future fiscals as well. I want to begin by acknowledging our still newish CFO, Jarek Jared, Isaacson. Jared has really hit the ground running. He's been with us since last March, so we're just encroaching the year mark here, and I think Jared and his team have done excellent job navigating, what has been a really, difficult and busy time period. As we know, we're also, on top of everything else, transitioning to a new financial management software system that adds a lot of extra responsibilities, particularly for the finance department. THPRD is really fortunate in that, one, we have Jared on board, and he has done the software transition before with other agencies. So that's a nice bonus. He's a great champion for that project and efforting it as well, of course, leading us through our development for the budget process as well. So thank you, Jared, for your leadership. As I was thinking about speaking with you all this evening, I reflected back, of course, on last year, and it has been an eventful several years. I spoke about the gratitude we were feeling because for the first time in a long time, we could actually see the light at the end of the tunnel in terms of the pandemic. It was clear that while we were still in the midst of things, it was beginning to get better. I also spoke about our challenges, really afforded us opportunities to build back better, restructure the district to meet operational challenges of the future. Today, a year later, we've made even more progress. And while we have much to celebrate in terms of people returning to programming and the success we've had with reopening, it is clear we still have some big challenges to address. As you saw in your packet of information, the overall general fund revenue projections are down about 10%, roughly $8.4 million. There are, of course, several drivers to this that are critical, including our challenges hiring back staff, particularly in the aquatic side. With fewer staff, the number of classes we can offer are reduced, which then, of course, reduces the revenue coming into the district. However, because of our revised operating plan process, we've been able to really actively reduce our expenditures each quarter, really monitoring carefully. This has helped. We also have the same hiring problems every employer has across our nation. The labor market really is tough, and to be competitive in terms of employee attraction and retention, we've made necessary adjustments to our compensation for both full-time and part-time employees. The rising costs of personnel, coupled with inflationary pressures to our materials and services budget side, have added to the complexity of the financial picture. So to be sure, THPRD is prepared to meet our operational needs and able to maintain existing service levels. We're working to lay a strong foundation for our future. As you'll hear in a minute, one of our top 3 district priorities for this budget season is to develop sustainable operating and financial models for the future that evolve with us. We're exploring all of our options right now, from identifying untapped revenue sources to looking at a local option levy as well to help support the district's operations. In terms of untapped revenue resources, this can be as simple as looking at a service we provide currently, like shelter reservations at parks, and expanding the number of locations that can be rented. This is a win-win in terms of expanding services to our public, our community, while also bringing in more revenue for the district. In terms of a local option levy, we're very early in the discussion phase. You will hear more about it as we move through the process, and to be clear, it will ultimately be a decision our board of directors makes, whether to pursue an operating levy or not. Right now, we're in discussions with our financial advisors on a feasibility study of what does a local option levy look like as early as May 2024. So, a great question. Why do we feel the need for an operating levy? Simply put, for many agents, yes. Well, I thought I heard someone in the background. No worries. So in terms of the need for the operating levy, simply put, our expenses are outpacing our revenues. And to maintain existing operational levels, we need to increase revenues. Looking at information finance is prepared for us this evening, we see that within 2 years, without major changes to our expenses or our revenues, we'll be looking at a budget shortfall of at least $10 million. This amount represents about 12% of our annual operating budget. For context, of course, all over the metro area, you see this happening. Our partners at City of Beaverton, they're looking at a $10 million deficit this year. That's about 2% of their budget. Washington County, $25 million deficit. Of course, they have a very large budget, $1.6 billion. So we've got some challenges ahead. We're not alone in those challenges. And while our focus tonight is to review current mid-year point of this fiscal and look at budget planning for next, we want to make sure you're aware of our plans and we're working on to address our upcoming budget gaps. Many other jurisdictions rely upon local option levies to fund general operations. The Beaverton School District, Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue are great examples. Multiple years of renewals of local option levies to fund services. And in fact, THPRD in its day, some 20 years ago, operated on predominantly serial levies, as it were, to complement our annual budget. So bottom line, while our financial picture continues to have its challenges, I'm confident in our ability to put together a plan that builds a sustainable foundation for the future. And I appreciate your support and guidance as we move forward. I think we've proven through sustained oversight and careful attention to detail, we can weather any storm. The fact is that we've done our homework already. We have a solid community-led vision plan for THPRD. We know what the public expects from us in terms of our focus, our values, our priorities. Now it's time to ensure we have the right tools and financial foundation in place to deliver on that community vision. I'm confident we'll be able to do that. If the board of directors agrees, once we go through our front end process and decides to ask voters to support an operating levy, we may call upon some of you in this meeting to help share our story with the public. You may be able to play an even greater role in supporting this effort than you expected. With that, at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Holly Thompson, our communications director, and she's going to do an overview of our district values and priorities.
Thanks, Doug. As Doug mentioned, my name is Holly Thompson, and I'm the communications director here at THPRD. And on behalf of everyone on staff, I just want to say thank you for your service to the Budget Committee. This evening, it's my privilege to be able to share with you the organizational values and our top fiscal priorities for the year. And I really want to give a lot of credit to our board of directors. It begins and ends with their leadership to really center us on our values and to help guide us as an agency to make sure that we're living our values in our daily work as staff and making, in terms of budget committee, investment choices that align with our values. We want to make sure that we're living these. So first and foremost, when we talk about our THPRD values, the first value that we talk about is leading with equity, with special attention to racial equity. I want to be clear here that we prioritize and we care and value all dimensions of equity, whether it's ability, age, ethnicity, gender, race, sexual orientation. We want to make sure that we have programming that is accessible, that we have events that welcome and include everyone, that we're surveying ourselves constantly to see who's missing, who in the community do we need to do a better job connecting with and uplifting and making sure everyone has an opportunity to enjoy the park and rec system and to truly find themselves in it. But we also know that race is the largest determinant of outcomes for people. And that's why we put a special focus on racial equity. And that's why we want to challenge ourselves as staff and challenge ourselves in our budgeting process to make sure that we're living our values and investing in programs and activities that truly represent this value. The second value that we use to guide and lead our decisions is environmental stewardship. It is a tremendous privilege to be stewards of public land, and we know we have a responsibility to keep that land better than what we found, than we received it, right? We need to keep it better for future generations. We also have amazing staff and volunteers that work in environmental education. We have the Tualatin Hills Nature Center, we have the Nature Park, and we have the opportunity to use these resources to really uplift uplift people in our community and to connect with nature and to talk about our carbon footprint, both as an organization, but as a community and stewards of this shared land to address our climate challenges. Our third value that we emphasize is our commitment to community vision. And as Doug already shared, we've done the work. We have the plan. We know what the priorities are from our community. We know what they expect THPRD to invest in, to grow in, and to uphold as we move forward. And this is really helpful information for us as we continue to address our budget challenges and think about our commitment to the community, our commitment to racial equity, and our commitment to environmental stewardship to make sure we're making the best investment decisions that we can to ensure our values are represented in our budget choices. In terms of fiscal priorities for the year, while our values are enduring and don't really change year to year, they might be fine-tuned with some emphasis. Our budget priorities can really shift year to year based on the environmental landscape and the situation that we're looking at for the upcoming year. This year, we identified as our fiscal priorities to continue to invest in employees and technology. We know that we've had a long technology deficit at THPRD, and we need to continue to invest in technology so that we have a modern system that serves people the way that they're used to being served in our new and evolving technological world. We also know that we have to continue to invest in employees, both from an attraction and retention standpoint, and to make sure that we're an employer of choice and that we're retaining the best talent that we can in this challenging labor market. We also want to continue strengthening programming opportunities. You know, we're 3 years, hopefully people are saying we're past the pandemic. I'm still waiting to know that for certain, but we have been on a journey in terms of programming, and we know that programming has been incredibly impacted. But at the same time, we've been able to prioritize our free programming opportunities to provide RecMobile and other events and activities to keep our most price sensitive folks in the community engaged. And we know we have that obligation to make sure that we're not pricing people out and that we're creating opportunities to serve the full community. And finally, as Doug mentioned, the other priority for this year is to develop sustaining operating models and financial models for the future. We know that our conditions have changed, and it's time that we prepare for our next phase of THPRD, and we have got the plan in place that we need to execute to stabilize our financial future. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our Deputy General Manager, Aisha Panis, who will provide us an update on operations.
Thank you, Holly. So on this slide, I get to share all of the wonderful things that our district is doing and just give you a recap of where we are to date in our fiscal year. So we have been able to welcome patrons back to our Harmon and Aloha swim centers. So that was a very exciting thing. And we look forward to serving more of our community when we open our final center, the Sunset Swim Center, and that's expected later this spring. This summer was strong for us. We had a 25% increase from last summer in our camp registrations, and we were able to provide a lot more offerings, a lot more camps, and we found that more camps were filling this past summer. And I think that was largely due to the fact that we were able to hire more staff this summer. So that was a really great outcome for all of us. We did have a series of really amazing community events, and we found ourselves really celebrating the rich tapestry of cultures within our community. We saw increases in our registrations and revenues for all of our centers from fall 21 to fall 22. Our Cooper Mountain, Conestoga, and Nature Center made the most dramatic increases over that time period by more than tripling their numbers from the prior fall term. Several of our centers outperformed their registration numbers even from 2019 pre-pandemic, and that includes our Cedar Hills, Cooper Mountain, Conestoga, and the Nature Park. We started a 4-day Centro di Bienvenida event and saw a 310% increase in participation in that program. On the next slide, we'll talk a little bit more about what has been going on in our neck of the woods here. We have in the upper left, you'll see a pool on a roof. Never a good thing, especially not a flat roof. We try to avoid it. And so we did spend several months this year working on improvements to the Garden Home Rec Center roof. So in addition to doing the roof repair and replacement, we also did some structural upgrades inside to support that new roof. And that work was completed in November. In the middle top photo, you can see that we were preparing our fields towards the end of our baseball season. We removed the bases, we mowed and edged our grass infields, and our dirt infields were groomed prior to the winter season. The photo on the upper right is one of our staff members working hard at getting some of our plants into the ground. And I understand that we're working on our bare root plantings right now. And so we had a bunch of staff out in the field today doing that. And then we also have some images on the bottom of the slide that on the bottom left, you'll see one of our staff members out checking on the status of something we call a beaver deceiver. And that's intended to help the water flow despite those busy little nature's engineers that try to stop it all up for us. And then we had some great landscaping work done in our parks around the district as well. So on the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about staffing, which you've heard some about. And this slide is largely similar to one you've seen in previous presentations because the situation continues. We're constantly hiring part-time staff. We're looking for them in these areas. We have some full-time positions also that we're recruiting. And one thing that we're very excited about was our recent implementation of a classification and compensation study has allowed us to really see an increase in our recruitment pools, and the quality of those folks within the pools has been really impressive. This is really important to us because through the pandemic, we've seen a turnover of 25% of our full-time positions, and that has a dramatic impact on operations. When you're losing that institutional knowledge and you're spending some additional time getting people onboarded properly to our organization, making sure they know everything they need to know, we really hope that that classification and compensation study will help us retain our incredible staff here. So on the next slide, I think I just want to give a little teaser to the fact that we have our spring registration coming up this Saturday, starting at 8 a.m. for our in-district folks, and the following week for our out-of-district folks. But we do have a lot of offerings. We've got our activities guide available, so please take a look and find something that you'd like to do. We've got lots of options. So now I'd like to turn it over to the next slide, see if there's any questions about our district operations right now. Okay, next up is Jared, who will be talking about our mid-year revised spending plan.
Thank you, Aisha. Jared Isaacson, Finance Director for the district. You have received a packet with mid-year budget reports, and tonight we will be reviewing that information and providing an opportunity for public comment on the upcoming budget for the 23-24 fiscal year. The budget for this fiscal year was adopted by the board on June 15th, 2022. And similarly to prior years, we are utilizing revised operating plans to manage the finances of the district. Our management team continues to work closely together as we evaluate programming and services to be provided. This strategy has allowed us to adapt to changes and difficulties as they arise. This is a summary of our revised operating plan, completed with the most recent projections of programming, maintenance services, and other operational activities that are planned for the remainder of the fiscal year. You also have in your packet a more detailed version of the operating plan, which gives revised projections for each division, department, and center in the district. Next slide, please. This is a summary of our revenue projections for the current fiscal year as compared to the adopted budget, the August revised operating plan, and the actual results for the two prior fiscal years. As you can see, revenues are projected at a higher level when compared to the two prior years, but lower than the adopted budget and the August revised operating plan. Next slide, please. We are projecting that revenue will be $8.4 million lower than budgeted for the 22-23 fiscal year. We started the fiscal year with 8.9 million more carrying forward funds than anticipated, primarily as a result of expenditure reductions made during fiscal year 22. We are estimating a $5.1 million shortfall in program revenues as they are still lagging in recovery from the pandemic. This is a result of the cumulative effects of several factors, including difficulties in hiring program staff, fewer operating hours, a decrease in participants in some programs, and reduced program offerings. We have also estimated reductions in the other revenues, mainly due to grants. The district did not receive a $5 million grant that was included in the budget. There is also $7.2 million in grant funds associated with capital projects that have not progressed as originally planned. And those funds will be received in future years as the projects proceed. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the cost of running the district, with recreation services and park services, which includes maintenance, being the largest part of our spending. Our revised operating plan includes reductions to spending in conjunction with the reduced program offerings, as noted in the previous slides. Next slide, please. In order to balance our revised operating plan, we made a series of spending changes. Reduced spending of $10 million on the general fund capital projects is anticipated due to deferral of projects to future years. Labor market challenges in hiring staff and lower than expected program offerings contribute to reduced spending for personnel services of $3.4 million. And then materials and services are providing a projected reduction of almost $900,000. We have increased contingency in our revised plan by $11.8 million due to the healthy cash carry forward from the fiscal year 22. This allows for funding to carry forward cash into the upcoming fiscal year. Next slide, please. Your packet includes a section of revenue and expenditure reports for the current fiscal year to date through December 2022. We are not reviewing these reports in detail this evening, but I did want to point out a trend that you will see throughout our departments in the expenditure reports. You will see an increased spending in December in each department that resulted from the full funding of the district's annual pension contribution of $3.9 million. This is similar to prior year as a shift in timing of spending, which evens out over the fiscal year and does not result in an overall increase in spending on an annual basis. And with that, I will pause to see if there are any questions on the current revised operating plan. John, you have a question?
Thanks. This is my first meeting, so I'm kind of coming in the middle. But I was just curious about the revenue and expense relative to like 2019, 2020 or 2018, 2019. And I should have sent you an email in advance. So if you don't have that, that's totally fine. But like to like a pre-pandemic state.
While I don't have the numbers in front of me, I can tell you that the revenues and expense on the program side are definitely less than, well, let me rephrase that. I believe that they are less than what they were in 2019. And some of the program staff can help me out with that question if they have other information. I can tell you that property taxes have remained stable. Each year, Oregon tax law allows us to increase the property taxes by 3%. And we also get an additional little more percentage on top of that with growth. So while property taxes have not been affected by the pandemic, our programming revenues definitely have. And I can provide that information, real information to you later on.
Okay, and then one last question, just to make sure I'm kind of understanding. A reduction, so when a reduction of service occurs that's associated with revenue, like fees or participation fees, the reduction or the not receiving the fees outpaces the expenses offered, to offer that service. Is that what's contributing to like the shortfall between the revenue and the expense related to reduction of services? I could try that again if that makes sense.
Let me see if I got your question. You're wondering if when we don't offer programs and therefore don't receive that revenue, we also don't have that expense. So depending upon the service, each service has or program has different levels of recovery. Some programs are very profitable, while others, running a pool, are not so profitable. And so there's, depending upon the program that isn't offered, kind of depends on how that affects the overall expense as well as revenue.
Yeah, I can help too here, Jared. I think the key point, and John, you're touching on a very pertinent topic, because this aspect of working through a revised operating plan on a quarterly basis, it is never, as we know, a perfect match. If a program doesn't happen, it doesn't mean, yep, the revenue disappeared and the exact number and expenses disappeared. Unfortunately, it's not that simple, but when we track closely, we're able to make those adjustments much quicker, so that we don't duplicate, an exposure point where we're carrying staff too long if a program isn't filling. So it gives us an opportunity to be a little more nimble. And I was able to, right off the web, we have all of our budgets posted. So I pulled up that 1920 fiscal, our program revenue was 13 million. So it is a significant downward slope, obviously the pandemic, and we're just rebuilding. We're just not rebuilding at a pace that, would be ideal, certainly nowhere near the 1920 fiscal.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the education.
No.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I will turn it over to Aisha Panis, our Deputy General Manager, for capital updates.
Yes, thank you very much, Jared. So here we are, an update on our general fund projects for the current fiscal year. You saw the previous slide about the roof work that we did at Garden Home Recreation Center. So here's a little aerial view showing one of the many different roofs that we have at Garden Home Recreation Center. So in addition to the work we did on the roof and the structural upgrades inside, we were also able to do some work on our windowsills outside the building, and it's a brick building in some places, so we were able to do some work on the mortar in between those bricks, which is just going to extend the life of this very historic building. And another project that we took, and I guess I should point out that the bottom right corner is that west side of our Garden Home Rec Center, where we had all that brickwork done, and just making sure that those wood sills are going to stand up to our wet Oregon winters. On the middle bottom, you'll see a photo of the inner workings of the Aloha Swim Center. And this was a project to repipe the boiler there and make sure that we can invite people into warm water. They tend to like that better than the cold, ice cold water. Next slide, please. All right. So also in the realm of boilers, we were excited to have our boiler replaced at Cedar Hills, this is coming up. We have the garden home project, we've replaced the boiler at Cedar Hills. We are on the way to replace the boiler at the Garden Home Recreation Center. These are giant apparatuses, as you can see here. In the case of the Cedar Hills work, we were able to get a much more efficient and much smaller boiler for the space. And so we're hoping we'll do something similar at Garden Home, but it takes a number of months to manufacture that equipment. And so we are in that phase now. We're hopeful that we'll receive the boiler and be able to install it later this fall. In the bottom right, you'll see a corner of our adorable little Fano farmhouse near Greenway Park. And we are doing a picket fence replacement project there, as well as improving and painting the fence all around that building. And having a sound fence is very important because we house a preschool program out of that historic building. So we want to make sure all those little ones are accounted for within the picket fence. Finally, you'll see that we have some electric vans on the way. And if you were with us last year, this time, we were talking about our excitement going into the current budget year, thinking about fleet electrification. And so we are pursuing the installation of a charging station at our Fano Creek Service Center, which will allow us to fuel essentially these new vans that are coming our way. And so 2 of these are standard replacements of our vans that are used by our trades techs that travel around to all our buildings and do the high level sort of work that it takes to keep everything running. But 2 were funded by a grant that allows us to expand our fleet of recmobiles. So we are really excited about moving into this realm, having the infrastructure to charge these vehicles at our service center. So we're looking to take advantage of that and move into the future with those vehicles. Next slide, please. On our capital fund, but system development charge fund, and these are the charges that are paid through development as new homes and buildings are constructed in our district. We receive funds that help us expand our system. So these are dollars that we can spend only on new things. We wouldn't ever use this for capital replacement, for example. And so 2 of the big things that are being funded through those SDCs are our construction of La Raiz Park, which is central-ish Beaverton off of Lombard. And that is going to be a lovely new neighborhood park. Construction is planned for this summer. And we did receive a $750,000 grant recently for the construction of that park, which always helps because it keeps more SDCs within the SDC fund and can go to other improvements. In the lower right, you'll see a concept plan for Ridgeline Park, which is something that is a project proposed by a developer and intended to be built by the developer as they're building out the homes in that neighborhood. And so we enter into these agreements pretty regularly. It allows us to have a park at the front end of the development versus the whole neighborhood's developed and there's just a piece of land there that's waiting for us to come along and develop. Often the developers are able to do it a little bit quicker than we are, but they do follow our outreach strategies and have had public meetings to talk about what goes into this park. And we have our staff that advise through that process things like what our vision action plan says. So there are definitely things here. For example, this one has a proposal for a dog run. And that's something we heard very clearly from our community when we were going out with the vision action plan. So these are 2 projects that we expect to begin construction this summer, and we're excited to see how both of those play out. Next slide, please. And in our capital update for the bond, and this is the 2008 bond, this is our last project. This is the last one that we are anticipating building with that $100 million passed in 2008. And this is a new amenity added to an existing park, also built largely with bond funds at Mountain View Champions. And this is near Mountain View Middle School in Aloha. And so this is in the southeast corner of that 20+ acre park. And what we're proposing here is to create a multi-sport court, and that's going to be located right near the pavilion that's built there, right near the parking and the community gardens area. There will be additional parking, which is something we know and have heard from many of our patrons who have folks participating in sports out at that site, that parking would be good. would be very beneficial. So we're excited about this court coming in to our repertoire and provide us another opportunity to invite folks to come out and play. Next slide, please. In addition to all of those, still within the budget for our capital replacement plan, we have these projects coming up on the north end of our recreation complex at 158th and Walker. We have a parking lot that has seen better days. And so we are anticipating repaving this parking lot in sections because we still rely on that parking for events that we hold out here. So we're trying to make it a little easier by doing 3 different phases. And in this first phase, we're going to be working on some of the ADA spots as well. So we'll get that first phase done and come back in subsequent years with additional phases to complete the entire parking lot on the north end. In the lower right, you'll see one of our not so happy looking tennis courts, but it's going to look a lot happier when we do our crack repair and resealing this summer. And so we have a number of sites, a number of courts in 3 different sites across the district. We'll be doing that resurfacing and repair at Sunset High School, at Garden Home Park, and at Center Street Park. So we're excited about those. And another conversation that's been had recently is as we do these types of projects, we're looking at each opportunity as a opportunity to see whether we can make this a dual use sort of thing. And so where we're able, we're wanting to look at the painting of pickleball lines in addition to tennis lines so that it can be used by both types of players. On the left side of the screen, you'll see an image of one of our pathways. And, you know, we have lots and lots of pathways and trails across the district. And each year we dedicate funding to going out and repairing some of the areas that need a little love. And so we do have a number of sites that are going to have some asphalt repairs over the course of the next summer and into spring and into summer. So the projects we're anticipating this year include Kaiser Woods Park, Stoller Creek Greenway, Summercrest Park, and also the Waterhouse Trail Schlottman Greenway. So that's where we'll be focusing our energies in the next few months. Let's see, next slide for grant funded projects. All right. So we really great news to talk about with grants. We love to find other people's money out there and save some of our own dollars. And so one big way that came through for us was the West Side Trail. And you'll see that map is on the right side is our West Side Trail. We have a nice long stretch of it constructed at the north end, but we do have a number of segments that we still need to do some work on. And so we got some great funding. We got $600,000 from Washington County through its Major Streets Transportation Improvement Program that was used for the design and engineering of the sections that stretch from that bottom part of the screen. It says WST 14. That's our segment 14 up to 18. So that got funding. And then we also received $1.9 million for design and engineering for a pedestrian bridge that would cross Highway 26, which you'd imagine is quite a significant barrier for people on bicycles or walking. So we're thrilled about that project, and that funding came from the Metro Natural Areas Bond, Parks and Nature Bond, the specific trails section of that funding. So we're underway on that project. On the right or left side of the screen, you'll see a little building, and that is a restroom building at Conestoga Recreation and Aquatic Center. And it's going to be very similar to the permanent restrooms that we are going to be installing in 3 different sites by the end of June 2024. So we are in the land use process for those, but we're anticipating those to go in at Greenway Park, Hazeldale Park, and one other site that I can't remember right now, Schiffler Park. There it is. So we're happily working away on those projects as well. And then finally, the Beaverton Creek Trail, which will be stretching from Hawken and northwest corner of the nature park to Hawken. That section, we've previously gotten grant funding for that, and for engineering and construction of this section, we're getting another $2 million. So that is another big project that is coming up for us. I believe that concludes our update on capital, so I'll pause and see if there are any questions.
Hey, this is Elizabeth. I can't find my hand, but I have a question.
Yes.
Thank you so much for these updates and all the updates we've been receiving. I had sort of two questions / comments. First, I'm so excited about the additional investments in trails. THPRD's trail system kept me sane during COVID. So thank you for continuing to maintain them and expand them. And then I guess my question is on some of the investments that you are making around boiler improvements, purchasing some electric vehicles for the fleet, all those sort of brought up for me, and charging infrastructure. You know, before we passed the last budget, we didn't have the Inflation Reduction Act. And are there federal dollars that we can tap into that can help subsidize some of the investments, the green investments that the district is making? And are there, you know, opportunities looking forward to take advantage of that?
Well, we certainly hope so. I actually had a meeting and discussion with a few of our staff members and our legislative affairs firm in DC to talk through that exactly. And one of the things that we found really interesting is that there is a congressionally directed spending opportunity each year. And this last year, we applied for a grant that would have, not a grant, but funding that would have allowed us to install charging stations at 5 different locations around the district. And it didn't move. It didn't move forward. And when we asked about that, because, you know, our congressional delegates are very green friendly, and we thought that that would be a compelling funding option for them. So, you know, a nice little win. But it was shared with us that overall, charging stations really didn't get funded through that process, which we were surprised by. And so we're in the process of trying to learn a little bit more about that. Why is that? What the conversation we had last week was about was the infrastructure funding seems to be really focused on replacement of existing infrastructure, more so than increasing or adding new types of infrastructure. So maybe that's why the charging stations weren't as interesting through that process. Things can always change, but that's what we heard through the last cycle. And so we weren't encouraged to submit for that this time around. There is another congressionally directed spending opportunity right now. Applications are due next week. So we're working away on those currently. And our focus this year, because we're looking at what our senators have funded in the past, have recommended for funding in the past. And so we've got two ideas. One is more related to emergency preparedness and making sure that our centers can serve as community resilience sites, shelters and places of respite for example, you know, making sure that we have adequate air conditioning and filtration for using our sites as shelters from wildfire smoke. That's one thing that we're hoping we could potentially get some funding on. And then we're also working on bringing forward our plan, our hazard mitigation for wildfire plan that we worked with our local fire protection agency on, especially in the last couple of years. But we want to expand that and do more mitigation to ensure that our lands will be more resilient and less susceptible to wildfire. So those are the two ideas that our legislative consultants are thinking might be interesting, but we're learning all the time and trying to present some good options that our congressional delegates can get around.
That's fantastic. I knew you'd be all over it.
We're trying to be. Yes, absolutely. Any other questions for me? Thank you. I will turn it back to Jared then.
Thank you. So this slide provides an overview of the projected resources and expenditures for our upcoming fiscal 23-24 budget. The adopted budget column on the left is our current fiscal year. The middle column shows the revised operating plan we reviewed earlier this evening. The right column is our initial projection of resources and expenditures for our proposed budget. This projection does not yet include all of the grant-funded activity for the upcoming year. Those amounts will be added into the proposed budget as we formalize our expectations in the coming weeks. Cash on at hand includes both projected grant fund cash carry forward of 19. Let me start over on that. The projected property, the cash on hand includes both our projected general fund cash carry forward, there we go, of 19.5 million and the balance of our capital replacement reserve of 2 million. The projected property tax revenues for the coming year, to project the property taxes for the coming year, we begin with our tax levy for the current fiscal year, add 3% for assessed value changes allowed under Oregon property tax law, and then add an additional 0.73% for property growth within the district. These additions are consistent with prior years and have been found to be consistently reasonable in our budget process. We are continuing to assume a 95% first year collection rate for property taxes in our projections. Now, program resources are being projected at levels relatively consistent with the current fiscal year adopted budget. We're not anticipating any inflationary adjustments to program revenues for our budget this year. Our managers will be completing further analysis of planned programs and will adjust these estimates accordingly as the proposed budget is developed. Other resources in these initial projections include interest, miscellaneous revenues, and rental income. We are continuing to evaluate our projected grant resources and will add those into the proposed budget. Now, personnel services of 44.7 million includes staffing at normal operating levels and takes into consideration our contracted pay increases for our represented employees and a 6% increase for part-time staff. Additionally, we have included the $3.9 million funding of the pension plan, which is part of the pension funding policy adopted by the board in January of 22. Materials and services of 13.1 million includes rate increases for utilities and other inflationary adjustments. Debt service expense of 1.1 million reflects the principal and interest payments due on full faith and credit borrowings for the district. Contingency includes our 2 million capital replacement reserve and our 2.5 million contingency appropriation that aligns with the board policy in DCP 6 for minimum fund balances and reserves. The capital outlay amount of 12.2 million includes capital carry forward spending and grant funded projects. And with that, I would take any questions you have on the projection. Yes, John.
Thanks. I'm and maybe you'll get to this too, but I'm curious about connecting the three priorities and where they show up in the budget. So the investing in employees and technology, strengthening programming opportunities, and then the sustainable operating financial models. Is now a good time to kind of ask about where those fit in, or is that another time?
Well, we don't have that information fully prepared for this evening. We will have it for our proposed, when we provide the proposed budget to the budget committee in April. But if there are any other directors or if Doug would like to speak at all to any of this, I would welcome their comments.
Yeah, I think what you'll find, John, is the April meeting is where you're going to hear, and uniquely, it's a great lead-in towards the April meeting. I appreciate that. The fact of the matter is that's exactly what we ask our staff as they're presenting to you all in April, is to emphasize those key priorities. Where do they jump out? Where do they exist within the proposed budget?
Thanks. Thank you.
Good question.
Any other questions? With that, I will turn it over to Elizabeth Edwards for public comment.
Thank you very much, Jared. And hi, everybody. My apologies for being a little late this evening. I got stuck while coming home in the snow, but we are now on to public comment part of our agenda. We have received 4 written submissions, and I am going to read them into the record. So please bear with me. Lisa Tenedo writes, I'm writing to urge you to provide adequate funding to restore the hours of the Elsie Stir Senior Center. For many seniors in our community, the center plays a vital part of their social, physical, and mental well-being. For some, it may be the only personal interaction they have in a day and helps keep them from being socially isolated. For others, it provides a comfortable place to exercise without feeling the pressure of gym culture. It's a valuable service for those that have lived in and supported THPRD for years and even decades. I personally know what a difference it has made in my mom's health. As a member of Viva Village, she appreciates the services you offer to her and others. The instructions she received in Elsie Stir's weight room have been invaluable for her in keeping her knees pain-free. I've heard my mom refer to her workouts there as, quote, her medicine. Before the pandemic, she was going multiple times a week, and it kept her more mobile and active. With the reduced hours, she's found it more difficult to squeeze in her workouts and has skipped some altogether. When I see her struggle on the stairs or limp as she walks, I know she hasn't been able to get in her workout. The limited hours are affecting her quality of life. So on behalf of my mother and many like her, friends as well as myself in 5 short years, I encourage you to provide funding to allow Elsie Stir to restore their hours and services. Our seniors deserve nothing less. The next comment comes from Edwin ST, who writes, please restore the hours at Elsie Stir Center. Since the pandemic, our seniors have really been shortchanged with the reduction of hours for the mental and physical benefits of a fully operational center. Viva Village has been a great partner for bridging the gap, but there are only so many virtual meetings and limited space in-person coffee chats to take. Elsie Stir Center is so important for our community, and it is a big shame that it is closed after 2 p.m. on weekdays and not even open at all on the weekends. Please consider our senior population and how much they have lost in these past 3 years. Thank you. The next comment comes from Vicki Sander, who writes, I'm a senior citizen who retired and moved to Beaverton 7 years ago. I began attending activities and programs at Elsie Stir and almost immediately. It became my major source of physical, social, and emotional support. It is extremely difficult for me for those years when the center was closed due to the pandemic. During that period, I often thought of the scores of seniors not having that daily lifeline and hoped others were able to weather the closure. I also became part of the Viva Village here in Beaverton. I'm in a leadership role with that community and witnessed the importance of decreasing the isolation that is common for seniors. The Elsie Stir Center plays a major role in supporting our local seniors. I have returned to my activities at the center and am hopeful that hours and services will be extended soon. Thank you for providing the funds for getting the center back to pre-pandemic operations as you do your planning. And the final comment comes from D. Tui, who writes, I've lived in this community since 1982. Over the years, my children and grandchildren have profited greatly by the many activities offered by THPRD and the generous voters and taxpayers of this great community. This contribution to our younger population continues. As I've gotten older, I've been grateful for the classes, activities, meals, and other amenities offered at THPRD's Elsie Stir Center. I was first introduced to Viva Village at an activity co-sponsored by Viva Village and Elsie Stir. I'm so grateful for that collaboration, and now I'm a dedicated Viva Village member. The Elsie Stir Center has been an important part of my life. What I'm feeling lately, though, is that the THPRD is not very interested in services for the older population of Washington County. These are the citizens who have supported THPRD all these years by faithfully voting in bonds to assist THPRD's efforts. What we see now at Elsie Stir are very shortened hours, limited activities, small class choices, restricted availability, fewer dining options, smaller, less professional staff. It is so disappointing. A few of the center's older participants are having difficulty returning to activities since the pandemic. They're older now, and the routine of exercise and socializing has diminished. But many more potential members are ready to join in. As Elsie Store once again becomes a thriving gathering place, it will attract these many new participants. As a Viva Village member, a voter and taxpayer, a silver sneaker card holder, and a senior citizen, I implore the THPRD board to begin Elsie Store's rejuvenation by extending the funds needed to support the center's full activities and attract new members. Elsie Store is a jewel in this community. It was such a social and health benefit to seniors. I sincerely hope it can rebuild into the vibrant service for the senior community that it once was. That closes the public comments that we received. Does the district staff have a response that they would like to provide regarding this evening's testimony?
Yeah, if I could, Chair, just a few comments. And this is, it's difficult for sure. I really want to say to these individuals and to the committee, that we know obviously how important the store center is. We wish we could open more hours, but simply the honest truth is it's not possible presently. We're rebuilding. We know this to be true. The reality is the Stewart Center is simply not alone. All of our centers have been deeply impacted by reduced revenues and rising expenses. For context, I want to share a little bit of the details with you. For instance, Sunset Swim Center is still closed. It's been closed since March of 2020 and will finally reopen at the end of next month after 3 years. And when it does reopen, it will be for 4 hours a day, Monday through Thursday, really focused on the prime areas. 4 others of our facilities are closed on both Saturdays and Sundays. Loa Swim Center, Elsie is that example. Garden Home Rec Center is the same. Harmon Swim Center is the same. As well as 3 additional centers are closed on Sundays alone. Beaverton Swim Center, Cedar Hills Rec Center, and Tualatin Hills Nature Park. And lastly, we've seen significant changes specifically in weekday hours for both the Loa and the Tualatin Hills Athletic Center. Our center supervisors have been empowered to really analyze the unique usage factors for their respective facilities. They were asked to design the best overall operational schedule they could to meet their center's unique needs. However, as we know, our patrons are often attracted to their favorite facility. You can't blame them. So the overall operational impacts that are happening across the district may not be as obvious to the general public when you focus on very specifically your facility. I've asked our communications team to do some messaging work to really help us to do a better job of telling this story. It is a difficult story to tell. It's a hard one to receive as well, I'm sure. We want the public to understand the reductions in service that they've spread throughout the district. We are doing our best to not disproportionately impact any one group or facility. The reality is, without some help, and hopefully that will include some level of a successful operating levy in the near term, THPRD is just not going to be able to bring back programming and operating levels to what the community had pre-pandemic, certainly what they were accustomed to. And we will take the time, Chair Edwards, we'll take the time to respond to these individuals directly in the next day or so. But I wanted to provide kind of that overview. It's a difficult situation for sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. I appreciate that. And I'm glad to hear that the individuals that took the time to write in will also be getting a response. I think that's appropriate to follow up with them. And as much as we feel like we are getting to the other side of the pandemic, we know that this is not 2019. We're having to make pretty big adjustments across a lot of different parts of government and other parts of our lives. So thank you for those comments. I appreciate it. Okay, this is my prompt. The next item on the agenda is an announcement about the date of our next gathering. So the Budget Committee work session has been scheduled for Thursday, April 20th at 6 p.m. This will be a virtual meeting, so we will be gathering same virtual bat time, same virtual bat channel. And then if there's nothing else, there being no further business this evening, I am happy to adjourn us.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Fun.